Hi, I'm Clinton Jones, Michigan State University College Hall of Fame in football and track and field, and also National College Football Hall of Fame. We were national champions in 1965 and 1966. You're watching Duffy Doherty's Milestone Minutes with Tom Shanahan. Go Green!
Welcome to another episode of Duffy's Milestone Minutes and the End Game. We are honored to have two college football Hall of Famers with us. Nebraska's Johnny Rodgers, the 1972 Heisman Trophy winner, and Oklahoma's Greg Pruitt, third in the 71 Heisman voting and second to Johnny in the 72 Heisman voting. And guys, I wore my National Football Foundation Hall of Fame T-shirt in honor of you guys. This is for the class of 2025, and which concluded Terry Hanratty from Notre Dame. All right. So for our listeners, our audience, we're including the 55th anniversary of the 1971 game of the century in this series about the 60th anniversary of the 1966 game of the century because of the link between the two games. Duffy Doherty has his fingerprints on both games as college football integration tipping points. In 66, Michigan State led college football integration with 20 black players. Notre Dame only had one. Back in those days, schools followed a policy, an unwritten quota policy of they didn't want more than a half dozen black players. Duffy was the first one to abandon that. Bob Devaney, who coached under Duffy, did the same at Nebraska. And then Chuck Fairbanks, who played under Duffy, he and Barry Switzer, his offensive coordinator, did the same at Oklahoma. So the 1971 game of the century is the first one with two fully integrated rosters. So that's kind of the theme of our show today. And let me introduce everybody. We got my partner here, Bajan Bain, who is going to help us with this documentary we hope to produce. How you doing, Bajan?
I'm doing pretty well. Thanks for having me on, and I'm honored to be on with these gentlemen who I watched play in my first game of the century because I didn't catch the '66. I was only about 7, and I didn't catch the UCLA, USC Gary Beavan, O.J. Simpson, Heisman, Rose Bowl, number 1, number 2, because I was only about 8 and I wasn't following the game yet. So these two gentlemen were my first game of the century.
All right. And Johnny Rodgers and Greg Pruitt became good friends after they played in the 71 game of the century. How are you guys doing?
Doing just fine, thank you.
We actually became friends before that. Prior to that, we went to the Kodak All America awards thing in Miami, and we've been friends ever since.
All right, great.
Here's Wiley's kick, gets high. It holds up there. Rodgers takes the ball at the 30. He's hit and got away. Back upfield to the 35, to the 40. He's to the 45. He's to the 50, to the 45, to the 40, to the 35, to the 20, to the 10. He's all the way home. Holy moly. Man, woman, and child did that. Put them in the aisles. Johnny the Jet Rodgers just tore them loose from their shoes.
Okay, Greg, you were on coverage for Johnny's punt return. Walk us through the play. And one thing I have great respect for you is you're a true sportsman. You admit you should have made the tackle on that play.
Well, the whole play was really before that. When Johnny, like I said, we met in Miami at the All American game. We became friends, so we used to call each other, talk to each other. I even visited Lincoln. The coaches didn't know that, but so we had this personal competition among ourselves. So the week that we got ready to play Nebraska, the subject of Johnny Rodgers is You have to be disciplined. You have to stay in your lanes and don't attack it. But Johnny and I had already been talking noise, so I wasn't listening to all of that. I was gonna get Johnny myself, and that was a big mistake. Now my grandmother used to say it's always some good in every tragedy. The tragedy was I didn't make the tackle, and as a result, we ended up losing the game. But the good is I learned from that, from because I became a returner. And when people made the same mistake I made on Johnny, I made him pay like he made me pay. Thank you, Johnny.
You're welcome, Greg. Glad to do it.
All right, Johnny, take us through that play. It's an iconic moment in college football.
Well, as I remember back, one of my deals was I never did fair catch. And Greg came down awful quick down there because he had a little animosity in his heart and had it just set on making sure that he covered it and got me. But as Lyle Brimmer said, he hit and got away. Well, he did hit me, but he didn't hit me hard enough to get me down. And I was able to get away, and he slinged me in a direction, and I went out. And next thing I know, I've almost run into the referee, and the referee forced me back to the other way, and I pushed on and got to the sideline, and then I was able to make my way on in for the touchdown. But it was me and Greg had been talking to each other, and we were. I had him all ruffled up and everything, so he couldn't wait to get down there. If he had broken down, I probably wouldn't have broke away.
And I think I read for years people would greet you with what the announcer said: "Holy moly, man and woman."
Well, they still do that even today. Lots of people and their children are coming up, and parents are talking to their kids about the game. And here in Nebraska, they talk about it pretty much all the time. It always comes up because somewhere or another they're seeing it for the first time, or parents are showing the kids. A lot of Nebraska fans are still talking about the game because they talk about it as being the game of the century here in Nebraska.
Right. Okay, and I mentioned earlier this was the first time a game of the century had two fully integrated rosters. Johnny, talk about what Bob Devaney meant to you and the welcoming environment he created in Lincoln.
Well, I was hell bent on trying to get to SC because Nebraska really hadn't won a championship since Jesus was a kid, and I was trying to get to SC to try to get more money and to get more exposure and everything. And after talking to Bob told me that if I came to the University of Nebraska, that he would recruit more African American players, more black players than any other time in history, and he would let them play. And that made a difference to me. But I really was not aware that the whole country didn't have black players. I just knew that we didn't have black players, so I had an idea that SC might have had some, but I was not really aware that there was a minimum of black players all over the country. But when he said that to me, how significantly it meant that he would recruit black players and let them play. But he did just that. He did recruit quite a few black players, enough to make a difference on our team, and he did let them play. And it made a difference in our win-loss record, I really do believe.
Yeah, and one of the great ones he recruited a year before you was Rich Glover. Same thing for you, Greg.
John Atkins, we had quite a few guys that really made a difference. Gary Dixon, we had some players, black players on the team, and I don't think they knew that they were some of the first black players, or there was a quota on black players at that particular time. Had no idea. Ernie Chambers, which was one of the Senator Ernie Chambers, probably the longest standing senator they had, was always an activist, and he pushed for black players to come to Nebraska and to be able to play. But I really didn't know there was an issue until it came out when he was pushing it, and Devaney was talking about how much he was going to do it.
Yeah, and that's because the 1960 sports media avoided race. A lot of this stuff is lost to history. Greg, talk about Chuck Fairbanks and Barry Switzer agreeing they were going to recruit more black players and changing the face of Oklahoma football?
Well, when I was in high school, my senior year, I was switched from quarterback to wide receiver. I had three teammates who had signed with the University of Oklahoma. Uh, 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 Bill Michaels was the recruiter for Oklahoma, and so I had a lot of communicating with him, and he was very good friends with my high school coach, Wendell Mosley. And so there was a underclassman a year behind me named Gene Settlers. Gene Settlers was a linebacker. Everybody in the country was after Gene. He was one of those blue chip guys. And so the relationship we had with my high school coach, and he would express that to most of the recruiters, that if you don't get my okay, they're not coming. I don't care. They won't you unless I say it's okay for you to come. And so for Oklahoma, if you want to come and get Greg Pruitt, then you're gonna have to sign him, because I'm not gonna have Gene Settlers sign with Oklahoma. But at the time, now I didn't know about all this, but I knew Coach Mosley was real good friends with the offensive lineman coach Bill Michaels. So I'll make a small story, shorter story. Gene Sellers ended up going to UCLA. I was switched from quarterback to wide receivers, because when I came out as a senior, there were no black in the NCAA quarterbacks, and so they switched me to wide receiver. I almost quit because I didn't like the change, but thankfully back then, the coaches say jump, you can only ask how high. So I made the move, and my mom she okayed that too, and so I ended up going to Oklahoma as a freshman. I recruited, and I went on campus and was recruited and coach. I had to actually do a workout, catch the ball for Coach Switzer, and so I passed that test. In fact, he jokes all the time. If you get to talk to him, he said when I came in, I did my workout. After the workout, I'm trying to think of the receiver for Oklahoma at the time. He was a number one receiver. He said, "We got a problem." And he said, "What was the problem?" He said, "We got to find I've got to find another position for the other guy to play." He said, "Why?" He said, "This guy is better than him." And so I ended up going to Oklahoma. It was a great choice. My mom helped me make it. In fact, I wasn't highly recruited. I had like 4 schools after me. And even 4 schools telling you the same thing can be confusing. So I told my mom, I don't know where I want to go. She said, "Okay, so this Sunday we're going to sit down at the table and I'm going to help you make your decision." So I said, "Okay." So on Sunday, I sit down at the table, only saw 1 envelope. I said, "Well, what happened to the other 3 envelopes?" She said, we made a decision. So I ended up going to my other 3 guys. My mom could catch a ride with them to go see the games and all of that. And they were happy that the first year that they were there. So my mom was pretty much convinced that Oklahoma was the place for me to go.
The one thing I want to add to what Greg said about Barry Switzer is it's in my book, The Right Thing to Do. Barry Switzer loved Duffy Daugherty, and he was a big help to me researching. And he said Duffy Daugherty did more for college football integration than any other coach in the country. And he talked about guys from Texas going past Oklahoma all the way to Michigan State. And of course, that includes the great Bubba Smith and Gene Washington and Jess Phillips. So they were all steered to Michigan State by Bubba's father, Willie Ray Smith. Let's move on here. So, Johnny, you were only the 4th Black Heisman Trophy winner. A lot of our younger audience isn't going to understand that. And for example, I talked about the unwritten quota, which the 1960 sports media ignored. USC only had 5 black players on their 62 national title team and only 7 on its 67 national title team. And one of them was San Francisco City College import O.J. Simpson. Talk about how Nebraska, Oklahoma, Michigan State, and schools like that changed the face of the game.
Well, I think it was because of the coaching. I guess it comes down to Duffy Doherty had his hand into to most of it, but Coach Devaney, in my opinion, didn't do that much coaching. You know, he was more of a player type coach. He would interact with the players, and I think he would get you to the point. I think we'd rather slide their ass on a razor blade than to disappoint Coach Devaney, because he was really the man. Tom Osborne was offensive coordinator, did a lot of the planning, whatever. And I think that our coaches, all of our coaches, I think could have been head coaches at any other university, but they chose to stay there with Bob Devaney because they just really believed in Bob Devaney, because he was just that kind of a guy. And every time that we did win a championship or we did win a national championship, all the money that came in went to those coaches and not so much to Bob Devaney. These days, a lot of coaches that get head coaches, they keep the money. Bob spread the money around to the coaches, so the coaches were motivated to stay there with him. And so I think that because of our assistant coaches, we had the intelligence of all head coaches and could have been head coaches everywhere. That we had strategic coaching at almost pretty much every position, and we were bringing in guys and to the point where we really were a team. I don't think that if I had the opportunity to leave and do other things, that I really would not have done it, because I would not really have wanted to leave the team.
Yeah. And I should have mentioned earlier that when I was researching for this book, I got Johnny's book, An Era of Greatness. And he talks about the evolution of Nebraska football under Bob Devaney. And that was how I was able to determine the increasing number of black players after Devaney arrived. And there was an unofficial Oklahoma historian that helped me do the same at Oklahoma. Greg, talk about how Oklahoma and these other coaches played a role in changing the face of the game.
Well, most of us we didn't have a close relationship with Coach Fairbanks. He kind of kept a distance. It was more so Coach Switzer was always around. I always tell people, I say, like, when Coach Fairbanks would walk in the locker room and you talking, it got real quiet. But Coach Switzer walked in the locker room, it didn't get so quiet. They kept doing what they were doing. But I have a lot of respect for him. He's like my dad today. You cannot go to Oklahoma and not contact Coach Switzer. First, you're going to be in trouble, because if you think you can go there and get out of the state without him knowing that you've been there, you're wrong. So
I just seen Coach Switzer at the college football, the baseball playoffs here, the College World Series just a few weeks ago, Greg.
Oh yeah, he get.
Oh, that's right.
I made a point to go visit him.
Yeah, Oklahoma won. Yeah, so he made a trip up there. Okay, Johnny, you mentioned you wouldn't want to leave Nebraska. Nowadays, of course, kids are moving all over the place. They're going to the highest bidder. Could you imagine? I'm going to ask you this first. Could you imagine leaving Nebraska? And then I'm going to ask Greg, what would a school have to pay, even Nebraska, for Johnny Rodgers to play? And if they had NIL back in the 70s, Johnny.
Well, I really wouldn't have wanted to leave, but I think I could have been coerced into going. Depending, but like I said, we had really a tight knit team, and I believe that winning isn't everything, but in Nebraska we did rate it right up there with oxygen. It was pretty darn important, and I can't see myself going to a team if I don't think that we can win for money. I could be wrong. It could be different, pretty much, if I had to do it then. But I really believed in us winning, and I wanted to win. And because we had the winning attitude, that I was able to become the player of the century and win the Heisman Trophy, because we were in the winning, and we had that winning attitude, and that was very successful. That we were able to dominate and to win. I don't think even with money that I would be happy on another team if I had money, but we were losing all the
And Greg, how much would Nebraska have to pay Johnny Rodgers in the NIL area?
I don't know. It's the money they getting paid now. We like 30 years too soon, Johnny.
Here we are. Hurts your heart,
It would have
don't it,
took a lot.
We should have been getting paid. Greg should have got 5-10 million.
You know, when I'm
but he was bringing to the table.
yeah.
Then that was a lot of money then.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Greg.
No, I was saying that I grew up poor, and just trying to get my mom to some of the games was a big deal. But I look and I can't believe it. All I can say is shake my head and just say we just came along too late, because even the high school players are getting paid.
Yeah.
But it's a tough game. We represent side of the game, and so this is kind of the physical and mental injuries that you get from football. It takes a long time to kind of show themselves. So it ain't. It's no such thing as too much money.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't have a problem with the players getting money. My problem is guys like Johnny Rodgers and Rich Glover built a tradition in Nebraska, not the guys that are being paid today. And same at Oklahoma.
Mm-hmm.
Greg Pruitt and all those great players, they built the tradition that made Oklahoma the powerhouse it is, not the guys that are getting paid today. So that's how it's a little backwards for me. You guys, we've discussed about the respect Bob Devaney and Barry Switzer and Chuck Fairbanks had for Duffy Daugherty. And I asked Bill Yeoman Jr. about this on an earlier podcast, if you go back and look at my string of podcasts, because Houston has a statue of Bill Yeoman, who was desegregated the Houston football program in 1964 with Warren McVeigh. And I asked Bill Yeoman Jr. about Houston having a statue of his dad, but Michigan State doesn't have a statue of Duffy Daugherty, who Bill Yeoman Sr. respected so greatly. What are your thoughts, Johnny? Certainly Bob Devaney deserves a statue. About no statue for Duffy Daugherty at Michigan State. And Greg, same question for you about Barry Switzer's statue and nothing for Duffy Daugherty. Johnny, you want to go first?
They're probably mad at Duffy for integrating black players. He just took off. As time went on, it's gotten rather popular, and other coaches and teams have benefited from it. But Duffy got it started. He was really the man. Had he not did what he did at that time, they probably wouldn't be getting paid now.
Greg?
Yeah, I think that the impact that black players have brought to the game has changed the game, and the person that's responsible for that change and getting those guys those opportunities should have a statue.
Yeah,
right. I agree.
Thank you, Bajan. Before I move on to final comments, jump in here.
Well, I think it's interesting to have Mr. Pruitt on. For one reason, is that a big recruiting pipeline and corridor for Duffy Daugherty, especially in his game of the century, was Houston Beaumont. And so it's kind of ironic that we're kind of getting more Oklahoma into the story, and that with Greg's origin, the region that he comes from, a bunch of the ball players that we touch on in the docuseries, even in Colorado, we have like Cliff Branch from Houston Worthing. Obviously, you talked about Jess Phillips. We talked about Gene Washington from like that whole Port Arthur, LaPorte, Beaumont, Houston, Orange. Several of those guys are very integral to this story. And of course, they became famous, a bunch of them on the 66 team. It would be interesting to know, and given the way college sports and college football was covered back then, with only 3 major networks. How do Mr. Pruitt and Mr. Rogers feel about that game of the century in terms of what did it do for the Big Eight to have those 2 teams in what was being called on the cover of Sports Illustrated and everything, the game of the century? There really hadn't been one since the Gary Beebe and O.J. Simpson one, and of course the one 5 years earlier, Notre Dame, Michigan State. But now this one wasn't in L.A. It wasn't in South Bend. It wasn't in Lansing. It was in Big Eight territory. What do you think that did as far as putting those 10-1, 11-0, going to the Sugar Bowl, going to the Orange Bowl, Big Eight teams on the map, and you guys being in the actual game of the century instead of somebody from the Big Ten or Notre Dame or that level?
Well, at that particular time, the Big Eight Conference was really noted as the toughest conference in the country. And we just happened to be the ones that was actually leading in that conference. But at that particular time, number one was, we were rated number one, Oklahoma number 2, and Colorado was actually number 3, and Oklahoma State and Iowa State. Everybody was pretty tough in the Big Eight. We were a lot tougher. All the teams in the Big Eight were tough. There was no slough. We didn't have slough games. We had all tough games. And to playing each other, getting through that, it just sent a sense through the whole darn country. Everybody was pretty much focused on what the Big Eight was doing. And so we came along where, like I said, where we didn't, it just, how can you be in Nebraska and Colorado and Oklahoma were not really big states, and they're leading the whole country in college football. And like I said, that really, I really wasn't aware that we didn't have black players that were playing, but they're starting to get attention and making a splash. And the Big Eight was only 8 teams, but they were the top 8 teams pretty much in the country.
Yeah, let's see where we lost Greg for a second here.
There he is.
He's coming back. Hey, Greg.
Yeah, I mean, how did it feel? It was only ABC, NBC, CBS, and obviously ABC had all the weekly games. The Keith Jackson and the Bud Wilkinson and the Chris Schenkel. But to you guys as players, being in the game of the century, how did it feel in terms of on the campus? Did you feel media or not feel media? Were you more like in the fishbowl and more focused on the game?
Well, TV was just getting big. I remember growing up, we didn't really have TV. Several years before that. I grew up. We didn't have running water. We didn't have electricity. We didn't have. When I went to the bathroom, we went to the outhouse. So to have any kind of a television at that particular point in time, and I was coming up, was a big darn deal. And even though we didn't have national television like we have it today, the exposure, it was all over the country. The Big Eight Conference was noted as the conference in the country, and Nebraska, Oklahoma, and Colorado was leading the way. And so everybody who followed college football knew that, and that brought attention to it. And I think, as I said, that that game of the century between Oklahoma and Nebraska at that particular time was the most watched college football game in history at that particular time.
Yeah,
more people watched that game than any other game in college football history at that time.
Yeah, and it still is. I think the figure is 60 million, and part of the reason for that was on Thanksgiving. Mm-hmm. So you had the whole nation's attention on one day as opposed to split on a Saturday. Greg, your thoughts?
Well, you kept in and out, so I kind of missed the question. But
as a ball player,
it was a big game.
Yeah. Did it hit you more later as the years went on and people come up to you? And did it hit you more later with the anniversaries and people coming up to you in airports and the mags, or in the moment? Were you more? Was it more like?
What?
focus on beating Nebraska, the whole media thing and the game of the century, the coaches have kind of blocked that part out.
They did. They blocked that. We had closed practices and all that, but it was a big game. We knew it was a big game. We looked forward to it, and it didn't turn out the way we wanted it to turn out. But you had to learn from your mistakes, and you had to be better.
The biggest game we'd ever played, wasn't it, Greg?
The biggest game. It turned out to be the big. You know, we played University of Texas, Oklahoma State was a rivalry, but not like Oklahoma, Nebraska. That was a huge game. It did put us on the map. People recognize you from that game.
Yeah, 1 and 2.
Glover and Brahaney. Pruitt against Rogers. Glover against Brahaney.
Right. We had the best defense. They had the best offense.
Mildred against Tanky. Everything is, everything. And to Tom's point, by being in the middle of the week or almost toward the end of the week, people are off work. They're home.
Thanksgiving.
Right.
Yeah.
Thanksgiving Day.
Yeah.
Yeah, and President Nixon called the coaches afterward, which was more unusual then than it is now. Now it's typical of a president. Bajan, another question?
No, it's just interesting to hear from somebody that is like right in the eye of the hurricane, whether or not the hurricane is just, let's just try to beat them and win the Big Eight and win the national championship, or yeah, we felt the hype at the time, like both things were going on at the same time. Because sometimes when you interview ball players, they say, oh, it didn't really hit me how big it was until later. Or they'll say things like, our coaches tried to sort of get us more focused on it being an actual game, not the game of the blah, blah, blah. Because you guys play them every year. There was a big rivalry every year.
Yeah, but we weren't 1 and 2 every year.
No,
this is the biggest game. We knew this was the biggest game ever that we'd ever.
Right. Heisman race.
We knew whoever win this game was going to go on and be national champions, and we were building careers on this particular game. And we realized that that we were the two best teams. Period. We had the best. Pretty much with defense, they had the best offense. We were number 1, they were number 2. It just didn't get any bigger than that. And everybody knew that everybody was looking at Oklahoma, what they were doing every week. They were looking what Nebraska was doing every week. And we played all the way through the season, got to the end of the season. That's Thanksgiving is towards the end. So we had a lot of time to get a lot of exposure coming from August going on to November when Thanksgiving comes up. There was a lot of hype that came up because we were number 2 and we stayed number 1 and number 2. But
did either one of you have any close calls in the season?
Even the practice.
Before that, the games that were close enough that the 1 or 2 ranking was on the line before you faced each other that year?
I don't remember. I don't think so. I think that was the game that was going to determine.
We didn't have any games like that game. No games
so you didn't
like
have,
that.
You didn't have one that went into the fourth quarter and was back and forth before that game.
We were undefeated.
Yeah.
We won. We had won the national championship the year before.
Of course.
So we were the team to beat. But then they had to beat us because we were the national champs. But they were capable. They had people. They had Do It Pruitt.
Cross White, Wiley, and Pruitt.
Yeah, Do It Pruitt.
You guys had Willie Harper.
Oh yeah, we had Willie Harper. Richie Glover. Richie Glover ended up being 3rd in the Heisman Trophy race, and he was a lineman.
Yeah, exactly. They had the first Selman brother.
Right, and they had the Selman brothers. Yeah. It was truly the game of the century at that particular time.
It really was.
And it
the 2 coaches.
Yeah, the coaches. Yeah, the coaches came through. We had more hype than any other time in history. So it lived live this and did what it's supposed to do, because it's going to be in history from now on. That pretty much is the game of that particular century, and we're looking forward to who's the one in the next century coming up.
Great
And
story.
we have that one locked down.
Oh,
What about the barbershop? Tom, what about the barbershop? Or have you already confirmed that the barbershop Lincoln and then bringing the barbers in?
Yeah, I forget if that was you, Johnny, or Rich Glover that told me that. A lot of these black players at Southern schools, they were recruited all by themselves, and finding a place to get their hair cut was a problem. And when Bob Devaney realized that at Nebraska, he brought barbers down from Omaha to cut your hair. And that was just all about making it was a welcoming environment for you guys, right?
Well, we're going to black barbers already. Ernie Chambers I was talking about Senator Ernie Chambers, was that the kid who was an advocate for civil rights? He was a barber, and everybody in my community went to that barbershop anyway. So that was the number one barbershop. And I just went to Ernie Chambers' 89th birthday just the day before yesterday. He had a birthday party for him, but he was the senator, but he was an activist at that particular point in time, and so the barbershops are pretty popular.
That was in Omaha or Lincoln?
In Omaha.
Okay, yeah. All right. Okay, well, let's wrap things up here. I want to get final comments from Johnny and Greg and Bajan. One of the sad things about the Michigan State Notre Dame rivalry is conference realignments ended the series. It used to be a traditional game every year, and they are going to play this year to recognize the 60th anniversary, but it's no longer an annual game. Same with Nebraska and Oklahoma. Conferences realignment. They no longer play annually, although I think they recently played to honor one of their anniversary dates. Talk about looking back on that game 55 years ago, and then just how sad it is that the rivalry isn't played every year.
Who wants to go first? You want to go, Greg?
Go ahead, Johnny.
Well, when you look back through history, and they call it history, his story, our story has been great. It would not have nearly been as great had Oklahoma not been around, or the Big 8 conference and players at that time, and black players entering the game, and have coaches like Bob Devaney, and the type of coaches that we had. I really wish, and I truly wish that NIL had been around. We definitely missed that for sure. But the only problem I have with NIL is that the players, I'm good for them going around, but if you sign a contract, you need to stay together. You have to have some unity amongst the team, and you got to know people, and we played for each other. I think that, like I said, we didn't want to let Bob Devaney down, but we didn't want to let our teammates down either. It's why we did a lot of things that we did the way that we did it, because we were trying to be a winning team and all for one and one for all type of deal, and we were serious about it. It's hard to see that you can get that kind of an attitude if you are an NIL player and you can just skip around every single year and nobody gets to know everybody's coming and going. I am glad that they're getting paid now, because we were just slaves, playing for this food, because it was against the rules for us to get any kind of money whatsoever. And then that's when the big money really started going in college football. They were making millions when TV came into play, and we were making the money for them, and we weren't getting any money whatsoever. I was supposed to not get any money at all. So it's a travesty on that part. And I think right now that with NIL, like I said, if you give a contract, you need to stay around a couple of years to kind of fill it, or we're not going to get the quality of football that we need to get.
Greg, 55 years ago, and what college football misses about Nebraska and Oklahoma not playing every year.
That's amazing. That was one of the biggest rivalries that stood up to the hype, and for us not to find each other, that was devastating to players who had played there and players who were coming to Oklahoma to play who had watched it on TV, wanting to play in that game when they got of age to go to college and be in a game like that. I never understood that. I don't agree with it. They should try to correct that. That game itself changed a lot of lives. It did, and it changed lives in terms of guys making decisions to go to Oklahoma or to Nebraska. And that was a big mistake. That's one they need to correct. They need to admit it's a mistake and correct it.
Okay, yeah, and the Michigan State Notre Dame players feel the same way about their rivalry.
Right.
Bajan, bring us home.
Well, just again, I want to thank these gentlemen because they don't realize how many Sports Illustrateds came to my house every Thursday with one of them on either on the cover or in an article or in the college football section, or me building my Saturday around. Yeah, I know you want me to do the lead and rate the leads and the vacuum, but don't at 1:00. Don't all that chore stuff and homework stuff. I gotta watch my Pruitt, Crosswhite, Wiley, and Mildred. I gotta watch my college football. So let me have my little boy cave for 3 hours. They didn't have all the night games back then, unless it was Southern Cal or UCLA or something like that. Didn't have a lot of games in the dark, but I really enjoyed both of you gentlemen's careers, even in the pros, and followed Mr. Pruitt on to the Browns. And it's just interesting I'm just glad that, 55 sounds like such a long time. It's amazing to even say that it was like 50, or however many years ago it was. That's like a 55-year-old. That's a middle-aged person, but this is 55 years ago. It's just, I'm just happy. I'm just happy to be here and be able to participate on this call. Wonderful.
All you probably guys. The receiver that I couldn't think of his name was Eddie Hinton.
Okay. Yeah.
Number 33. I remember. He played for the Colts.
Okay. All right. Well, It was an honor to have you guys on with us.
Thank you.
Hopefully we're going to be able to get this documentary done that tells so many untold stories about college football integration in the 1960s and where it took us to the 1966 game of the century and the 1971 game of the century. Thanks for watching, and share this with as many people as you know.
And it's the Rose Bowl for Duffy Miller.
Game Changers of the Century sheds light in how longtime Michigan State football coach Duffy Daugherty and his men from his coaching staff of the mid-1950s leveled the racial playing field in major college football by recruiting black players from all over the U.S. and attracting Southern and Southwestern talent whose high school coaches trusted their charges to these inclusive programs. Daugherty and the coaching tree changed the game forever.
I am so excited to be a producer for Game Changers of the Century.
When you win and you're in the locker room, there's such a feeling of warmth and satisfaction.
Daugherty not only welcomed high school All-Americans, he took chances on lesser-touted players in black quarterbacks when that was a rarity. Assistant coaches from his early staff, including Bob Devaney and Dan Devine, and many players as well, went on to head successful programs at Nebraska, Arizona State, Oklahoma, Colorado, Houston, Notre Dame, and Missouri, where they too fielded rosters which were much more diverse than their opposition.
I was lucky enough to be at the game that changed the world forever.
Witnessed by 33 million viewers when #1 ranked Notre Dame faced #2 Michigan State in 1966. The game ended in a 10-10 tie and became known as the Game of the Century. Game Changers also debunks prevailing myths regarding racial milestones in collegiate football and provides social background as to what was happening in the country. In 1962, the Colorado University Buffaloes won the right to go to the Orange Bowl. The committee would not allow the black players to stay in the same hotel.
If we're going to go, we're going to be a team.
Joe Romig, the team captain, told them they would boycott the Orange Bowl unless they could stay in the same hotel. 8 years later, another Colorado team would once again bump into the ugliness of racism.
It's Alabama versus Colorado.
It was Eddie Crowder's 1969 Buffs who matched up against Bear Bryant's Alabama Crimson Tide in the Liberty Bowl. The Crimson Tide, however, was still a team of all white players. Game Changers is being produced at a time where the spotlight is on the University of Colorado and head football coach Deion Sanders, the first HBCU head coach to transition to a Power 5 coaching position. At the University of Colorado, he led the Buffaloes to a 9-3 regular season record in his second year as head coach.
The 2024 Heisman Award goes to Travis Hunter.
In the 2022 to 2023 season, the NCAA generated $1.3 billion in revenue from television broadcast rights, ticket sales, alumni donations, licensing, and advertisements. Additionally, in 2023, 9 NCAA programs brought in over $200 million each,